All right, everyone. Bernie Sanders has been looking at the economy and judged that it didn't work well enough for him and people like him who don't want to actually work. So he's decided that we need another tax as well. So this is like the fifth or sixth time he's proposed a tax, because first he proposed just a general tax increase. Then he proposed a wealth tax and attended to that a wealth registry. An additional business tax, which is on his own website, by the way. You can go fucking read the PDF for yourself. I think hasn't he also proposed an increased estate tax as well? Like lowering the threshold and increasing the amount, so you can't leave shit to your kids. You'll have to have a living will and, finagle around with a lawyer, which is the whole point. And then now he's proposing as well an additional tax. This is a business tax. Essentially, if the CEO, if the person in charge of the business makes too much more than the employees, like some arbitrary threshold that I'm sure would be malleable, so we'd see where it would lay if he got into the presidency, and if the Democrats would allow him to do this. But they'd basically be undercutting all of their own corporate sponsors and donors, so I doubt it would happen. But the idea is that they would pay an additional tax. What's this actually going to cause? This will probably cause corporations to cut some corners. Like if I'm in that position, I'm saying, well, I want this competitive CEO to run the business. I'll just fire some of my employees and pay the rest a little bit more. Not that it's going to matter once you have a $15 an hour minimum wage driving the cost of goods up. By the way, when we look at things like this, absolute numbers mean jack shit. If I make $10,000 and you make $10,000, but you live in an area where you can buy twice as much with $10,000, we don't have the same amount of wealth, except as an absolute number. Our ability to actually purchase is totally different. I'm sitting over there, I'm living off ramen, and you actually have some substantial food in your diet. My car's rusted out and fucked up, and I'm living in a heroin hovel. You're living in, a respectable flat in a working class neighborhood, and you can actually have a car that runs reliably. There's a big difference between our income, even if the absolute number is the same. You look at just within the United States, the purchasing power of a US dollar is hugely different. If you compare like an urban, like say San Francisco, purchasing power of a dollar in San Francisco is a fraction of what it is here. The purchasing power of a dollar here is substantially lower than in small town Texas. If you look, there are spots in the country that are a lot cheaper than others. In an increasingly globalized world as far as trade and commerce goes, this actually makes more and more of a difference too. A huge difference on people. Their access to those globalized goods is different too. You live out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, it's going to cost a little bit more to get things shipped in. It's going to take a little bit longer. Maybe things get folded, spindled, and mutilated a little bit more. There's a difference between New York City and Rutland. I'll just put it that way. And it's not just that when in New York City, you can't see the night sky. It's like, wow, the moon exists. What are stars? Literally, I went through New York City at night. I looked up. There were none. I think the North Star is dimly visible at certain times on a clear night. I feel sorry for you, by the way, dude. And I've been in areas more rural than this, so let me tell you, it's absolutely stunning. Woodstock, Vermont, not exactly a large settled area. But yeah, more taxes. I wonder why the socialist is proposing yet more taxes. But the thing is, the way Bernie Sanders and his ilk present it is that the government is going to take money from the rich. Not Peter Pan. What's the dude? Robin Hood. I'm getting it mixed up probably because they both wear similar clothes. Taking money from the rich, giving it to the poor. Oh, well, we care about the poor people. That's not what's happening. What Bernie Sanders is really proposing is taking money from the rich and giving it to the government. And some of it will go to the poor. But it's not going to make any difference. The price of goods will rise accordingly anyway. It's called the free market. We're not going to actually end up with a fully centralized system, and if we did, it'd be even worse. A fully centralized system would be so inefficient and collapse within a half a century or so. Why do you think China ended up easing up on its centrality? Why do you think that China, which is one of the fastest growing and most successful economies in the world for the last, 4 decades, why do you think that they decided to take a model that initially was totally centralized, pure communism? They said, well, it doesn't work. We'll have a hybrid system, a mixed model. We'll have communism. We'll have total centrality and authoritarianism, but we're going to create these free market pockets within the country that have no rules whatsoever other than don't disgrace communism. We'll give you the opportunity. We'll allow you to invest, come in, build shit. Economy roars on ahead. No workers' rights, no environmental laws. Until very recently, they didn't really care. Nothing. Zoning ordinances. What the fuck is a zoning ordinance? Pollution scrubbers in your smokestacks? What are you smoking? Workers' rights? Ha ha ha! You can't even look that up on Chinese Google. It's beyond Ancapistan. It's the worst system because then you have the potential abuses of a laissez-faire system governed by a centralized system that itself is massively totalitarian. It's the most brutal system in the world, but it has, in those cases, worked. By the way, look at the rate of return for their private industry over there versus those that are centralized. Big difference. Private market wins every time. Berniesanders wants to get away from that and make a centralized system that'll be dumb and boring and rob opportunities from Americans while punishing people. I find it funny when I hear people on the left, they're like, well, if you're not yourself rich and you're arguing in favor of the rich not paying these taxes, then you're just being a cock. You're a bootlicker. No, it's called I want to be on that level. I want to be wealthy. And I don't want the government stealing my money anymore if I get to that level. And even if I don't, those are my fellow Americans. I don't begrudge them their success. Because the government's not my mommy. The government's not my savior. The government isn't actually Big Brother trying to keep you safe. The government is an authoritarian pig. A fucking monster. If you're worried about the abuse of the rich because they have too much wealth and power, the government has infinitely more wealth and power than the rich do. And they're in cahoots with the rich anyway. What the fuck is this going to solve? No, the CEO that ends up paying more or the business that pays more will be the one that doesn't have political connections. You think Walmart's going to pay more? You think Bezos is going to pay more? Like Berniesanders is actually going to implement this properly? Name a time that the government has in the last century implemented a program like this properly so that it actually worked long term. It doesn't happen. Centralization sucks. It's inefficient. It doesn't make any sense. Decentralize everything. Get out of business. Let the private marketplace decide. Make it a true workers' market. Keep those basic protections. Keep the basic welfare system. Close the border in so doing. Problem solved. No more problem. Everything's a lot less costly. People will make more anyway long term. College will cost less once you get government grants out of it. Oh my God, drug prices are so high. Pharmaceutical corporations are evil. No, the government's evil. The government enabled those monopolies. Through regulation, preventing smaller competitors from existing. Deliberately excluding foreign markets. Deliberately excluding domestic competition cross-state. The government did that. It wasn't the pharma agencies. All they did was donate money to the politicians, and the politicians did it. It's their goddamn fault. It's the fault of government. That's about all. Peace out.